Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jo, and I am part of the developer relations team here at Deno. And if you've not heard of Deno before, it's an open source JavaScript runtime. So if you're used to using Node, it's very similar to that. And it's also like Node, originally written by Ryan Dahl, who was the original creator of Node. And he took all that experience that he had after 10 years of learning lessons and created Deno. It's written in Rust, so it's super fast. And it comes with a whole load of really useful built-in tools. We're trying to make your developer experience delightful. And whenever I mention Deno to developers, I often hear the same response, like, oh yeah, I've heard of Deno. Deno sounds really cool. I keep meaning to check Deno out. And while that's a really lovely sentiment, it's actually not great for my OKRs. So today, I'm going to show you some cool stuff that you can do with Deno that doesn't take up too much brain space and hopefully gives you a taste of what Deno really is, how much of a delightful developer experience it can provide you, and maybe convince you to try it out for your next project. So this is the Deno website that you can see here. And so the first thing that we're going to have to do in order to use JavaScript is we're going to have to install it. And I really want to give you the absolute beginner experience. So just to prove that I don't have it installed, let's just do a quick check. Let's zoom in here a bit. So if I do Deno -v, you can see I don't have Deno installed. So we're going to need to install it. So we'll get the command to install it off the Deno website. So if we just scroll down here, we can see I'm on Windows. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste it directly in here and press enter. And we're going to get Deno installing. And this should be a super fast, super easy install. In fact, there we go. It's already installed. And just sort of to prove how easy this is, like I understand I'm on a fast machine here. I'm on a wired connection, but the other day I wasn't. I was in a shared office space and I installed Deno on a Samsung Z Fold 6 phone. So this is it running on, the Galaxy Fold 6 using Samsung DeX. So it's running natively in ARM. I've got VS Code side-loaded and I'm able to code on my phone, make my Deno projects. Like you can basically run it anywhere. It's super great. But yeah, we've got it installed now. So let's open up VS Code and let's start a new project. So I'm going to open up my terminal. And I am going to cd into my dev drive. And let's make a new project. So Deno has a bunch of tools, as I said. One of the things that it has is an initializer, which will scaffold a basic project for you. So let's just do that right now. So we can just run Deno init, and we'll give it a name. So let's call it demo project. And it's going to create that demo project for us. And then it tells us that we want to cd into it. And then it tells us all the things that we can do with it. So let's do that now. And then let's open it up in code. Well, VS Code, you can do this. There we go. Okay, so this is what Deno has done for us. It's set us up these three files. We have, first of all, our main.ts file. And this is our entry point to this little app that it's set up for us. And you can see it's just put a basic application in here for us. So all it's doing is it's making a function to add two numbers and then returning the sum of those two numbers. And you can see we've got a couple of red squiggly lines here. And that's because VS Code at the moment doesn't know what Deno is. So what we're going to do first in order to make this dev experience a bit nicer is we're going to install the VS Code extension, which is going to give us all of the power of the Deno LSP, a language server, which is going to give us things like code, auto completion, suggestions, testing, all of that. So let's find the Deno extension and get that installed. Cool, so now if we go back into our project and back into our endpoint, those red squiggly are gone. So now let's have a look at the code itself. So as I mentioned here, we've got a main TS file, we've got a configuration file, which is this Deno JSON, and we've got this main tests file. And I can run this project by using Deno main.ts to run the project. And I can see here that it is output the answer of the code that we were running in our main TS. And if we just jump back in here, if you've not seen import.meta.main before, the main property checks to see if the file is being called directly by Deno. So if it's the entry point of your project or if it's being imported as a module somewhere. So this code will only run if it's being run by Deno itself. It's a super useful little tool there if you've not seen it before. Okay, so let's have a look now at our tests. So it set up this test file for us, and you can see we're using this Deno test function, which comes for free with Deno. So this is something that actually we don't need to install any third-party tooling. Deno really wants you to be writing good tests and for you to be able to write tests without sort of thinking about it. So the Deno testing API actually comes for free with Deno. But you can see here we're getting a red squiggly line, and that's because we haven't installed yet. Oh, our special guest has arrived. Thank you for your help, Puff. So let's do our installation, and this is exactly what you're used to from your Node project. So it's just going to be Deno install, and that's going to do those installations for us. And now we've got rid of our red squiggly, and we can run our tests with Deno test. And if we change the test, we can watch it fail. And yeah, as I said, this is all built into Deno. You define your tests with the Deno test API. It's part of the Deno test framework. And what we're doing here is we're importing assert equals from the Deno standard library, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then we're importing our main TS file, which we're actually going to test. And so we briefly saw the Deno install command, which leads us nicely on to our final file to have a look at, which is our Deno JSON. So again, if you're used to Node projects, this is going to be kind of similar to your package JSON. This is where you're going to set up the configuration for your entire project. And we have tasks, which are similar to your Node scripts. And we have our imports, which are similar to your Node dependencies. And when we did that installation earlier, it is going to have imported this dependency for us. And this dependency, you might not recognize this. So JSR is a JavaScript package repository. Much like NPM, it's a place where you can publish your JavaScript packages. The lovely thing about JSR is that you can publish also TypeScript packages directly to JSR. And Deno has made a whole bunch of packages for you in this thing called the standard library. It gives you just some nice blocks of code that you can use in your own projects. And a standard library is something that a lot of you might already be, it might be something you're used to. A lot of programming languages have their own standard libraries. JavaScript doesn't have one yet, and I think that's sort of a shame. But Deno has made a whole load of these packages, which are blocks of code that you're going to find yourself needing to use regularly. You know, we don't want you to be reinventing the wheel. So the standard library is there for you to get going quickly. And let's just have a look at it actually. So if we open up a new tab and we go to jsr.io and then we search for the standard library. So let's look at what is actually available to you here. So you can see you've got all of these modules that you can import and use. And these are just things that you're going to find yourself having to write regularly. And instead of having to do that, the standard library is there for you. It's super fast. A lot of these packages are written in native code. So it's going to run nice and fast. You're going to save your time not sort of reinventing the wheel, as I mentioned. Yeah, so let's jump back into VS Code. So something else that you might notice here, which is a little bit different from your Node projects, is we did an install there. So we've installed this standard assert package, but we've got no mention of it in our project. And that's because Deno doesn't have this sort of modules folder in the same way that Node does. Deno installs caches your packages in a global cache. And I personally think this is actually quite nice because it doesn't pollute your project folder. It means that this whole project is a lot neater. It also means that if you're using the same dependency across multiple packages, you've got it installed in one location rather than having it installed in multiple different projects. I personally think it's quite a nice way of doing that dependency usage. So let's jump back into our Deno JSON file and have a look at what's actually going on in here. So earlier we ran the project directly using just the Deno run command. So when we did Deno main.ts, what that is, that's an alias, like a shorthand for Deno run main.ts, and you can use Deno run to run any JavaScript or TypeScript file. That's something I haven't mentioned, is that this is a TypeScript file, and we were able to just run that without having to do any compilation step, without having to do any configuration. Deno can just run your TypeScript files and just deal with them. And if you want to, there are configuration options for the way that the TypeScript compiler works. So if you do want to configure them, you absolutely can do in your Deno JSON. So why don't we try messing up one of our, why don't we make this into a string, for example. If we do that, because Deno understands TypeScript, Deno is able to give us some suggestions for what we might have done wrong. So you can't assign a string to a type of number. And this is what comes for free when we install the Deno LSP earlier, sorry, the Deno extension earlier. Yeah, so sorry, that was a brief tangent on TypeScript. Let's go back into our Deno JSON and just have a look at that task. So we saw we can run the file directly, but if we want to start doing slightly more complicated things, like you know, adding in a build step for a Vite project, for example, or a dev step, we can absolutely do that with our tasks in the same way that we would with our Node scripts. So we can, instead of running Deno main directly, we can say Deno dev. No, Deno master. Oh, sorry. There we go. And you can see that it's doing the exact same thing that we did before. It's outputting the answer, but it's also adding in this watch flag so that now when I update the main TS, it's going to rerun the script as we make changes. And like, that's super helpful. The type safety of, you know, being able to use TypeScript straight out of the box, having those hints right in your editor, I think are super useful. But let's take a look at some of the other tools that come for free with Deno. So let's say I add a new variable to this function. So let's say I add in C, which is also going to be a number. You can see here, VS Code is going to tell us something. So I don't know if you can see that squiggly line. I hope you can. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Maybe there you go. So we're getting a hint here from VS Code saying you've declared it, but you've never used it. And this is part of our linting. So Deno also comes with a linter built in. And we can see the output of this if we run Deno lint. There we go. So that's going to tell us the exact same thing, that C has been initiated but never used. And the linter, again, is a tool that just comes for free with Deno. We don't have to install any third-party libraries to do this. It's just right there for you. And then let's say you're working with a team member who is unhinged and decides that they want to write their JavaScript like this. So they've maybe done that. They've, what else can we do here to make this ugly? We'll do that. We'll do our console log. Maybe we'll drop that onto a new line. They've written some code which is not the standard way that you would like it to look in your projects. Deno also has a formatter built in, so we can say Deno format, and that's just going to reformat that file to make it look the way that you want it to look. And both the linter and the formatter are configurable, so you can choose what rules you want. You can choose how you want your code to look, and it's just going to fix up any random formatting, and it's going to catch any linting errors while you are in your while you're sort of editing. And you can absolutely hook these up to things like GitHub Actions. So if you want to check that your committed code matches specific rules or matches a particular look, you can hook up your linting, you can hook up your formatting as part of your CI pipeline. And that's just going to stop devs from being able to merge code that doesn't meet your style standards. And all of this just comes with that initial install. And Deno also has a whole bunch of useful APIs for you to use in your project. So we saw very briefly earlier, we saw the test one. We've also got things like reading and writing files. We've got, in fact, why don't we take a look at the docs and just take a look at the list of stuff that we've got. So one thing I haven't shown you yet, this is the Deno doc site. This is my magnum opus. I've spent a lot of time working on these docs. And if you want to see everything that you get with the Deno API, every single API is available to see here. We can actually see the list of every single one in here. But you can start to see things that might be useful to you. So we've got our file system, we've got things like an HTTP server that comes out of the box, support for WebSockets. So let's have a look at some examples of these. So let's dive into our main.ts file here. And we're going to create a new text file called hello.txt, and we're going to add some code into it. So let's just delete all of that for now, and we're going to say text equals wait, and Copilot is going to do the hard work for me. So we're going to read the text out of a file, and we are going to just make that file in here. So we will create a file called hello.txt. And in there, we're just going to type in hello world. And so now when we output this, we would hope that it's going to say hello world. So why don't we try running our task dev? We're going to say yes to that. There we go. And we have output hello world in here. And we can also write to files too. So we could maybe make a whole new file. So we could say, Deno, no, we're gonna wait. Oh, there we go. VS Copilot knows what I want to do already. And we're going to just update that to be a new file. And we're going to say, hello world, the second. And now when we run this, we should see, there we go. Hello world, the second has been written. And so that was just writing a string to a file. We can also do some exciting things with an array of bytes. So here's one I made earlier. So we're just going to create an array of bytes here. And when we run this, we'll end up with hello3, which has given us the word hello, which is what that array of bytes was. So that's just a few different ways of using the file server APIs, and that's just write text file and write file and read text file. There's a whole load of different options available to us. And in fact, one of the nice things about, again, installing that VS Code extension is that we can do Deno and we can get suggestions for every single thing that you might possibly want to do. So let's take a look at another example. So I mentioned, we saw in the docs there that Deno can do a bunch of cool web HTTP server stuff. So why don't we try that? So we'll do Deno dot serve, and we're just going to give it a request. And let's see if Copilot can do this for us again. Return new response, hello world, and that will do fine. So that's going to set up a very basic HTTP server for us. There we go. So you can see there, we've set up an HTTP server that's running on localhost 8000, and it's given us a response of hello world. Let's see if I open this up here. Let's get that into here. There we go. There's our web server running on port 8000. Like, this really is nice. I hope nice and simple, and I hope makes sense. Deno also supports a load of Node APIs. So if you did want to do, for example, your file system stuff with Node.fs rather than with the Deno tools, you absolutely can do that. So you can do that via importing the actual Node module. So we could do, in fact, let's just delete all of this. Let's do that. We're going to need to run and install. Cool. Okay, so that should now have updated our hello. Oh no, that's reading from our hello text. Yeah. So if you want to use your Node packages, you absolutely can. You just use this node colon, which will allow you to do that. And Deno also supports a load of web APIs. So if you want to, you can absolutely, in fact, let's have another look at the documentation here. So these are all of the web APIs that Deno supports out of the box. And one of my favorite ones is fetch. So Deno supports fetch natively. So if you want to, you can absolutely do a fetch directly in your project. So let's try that out. There we go. So I've just fetched a load of information about dinosaurs. All we're doing here is, using fetch. So if you, I mean, you will have noticed actually while I was running these, let's end it and run it again. So I don't know if you noticed while I was running these, we got this little pop-up here that says access to something has been requested. And Deno has a security model that we think keeps you a little bit safer than Node does. And what it's doing here is it's checking what has access to what. Code that you run with Deno won't have access to sensitive APIs such as file access, network access, environment access, that kind of thing, without you explicitly granting it. So the reason for this is, it's a bit of a wild west out there with the modules that we depend on. Like, we're using all these third-party modules every day, but we don't always know, who's writing them, what's in them, whether they're being maintained, whether they're safe, whether, they've been hacked. And this permissions flag just allows you just a little bit more peace of mind. It allows you to have a little bit more of a granular control over what your code has access to. So we've been given a prompt here saying that the fetch API needs access to the network, which, like, of course it does. Of course it needs access to the network. So it's saying here, we can say yes, allow, we can say no, or we can allow all net permissions. So I can just type A in here, and then it's going to allow that access. But what we can also do, if you don't want to have to type that in all the time, Deno has a bunch of permissions flags. So I can put in my task, I could say, for example, allow net in here, and that would allow it to run without the need for that permission. So there we go. So that time it ran, I didn't need to type in the A. And if I'm in dev mode, I don't even need to use these allow flags. I could just say -A, which is just going to allow everything. Super useful tool for when you're in dev mode. Absolutely do not recommend that for anything that is actually going live. You should definitely be looking at the permissions that you're using rather than just allowing everything. So the absolute final thing we're going to look at, and I'm sure you're all thinking it, is, I already have a working Node project. Like, I don't want to have to learn an entire new tool in order to run my projects. It doesn't matter how many nice tools you've got. I don't want to have to migrate over. And the nice thing is that Deno absolutely can run your Node projects. We have a whole load of support for the Node APIs already built in. If you need to, you can use the node colon suffix to make sure that you're getting the packages that you need. But I just want to prove this to you. So we're going to have a look for a project, and we're going to try and install it and run it with Deno. So let's go on to GitHub and let's search for a project that we can use. So let's have a search for, why don't we search for Node.js demo. Okay, this looks like a demo I actually use. Let's get it and install it. Get that installed, and then we're going to cd into it. And let's open it up. So I can see in here we've got a source folder, and in there is our package JSON. So let's cd into source, and let's try installing it and see what happens. Okay, fingers crossed. I know you came here to watch taskbars load. Okay. Let's see if we can do it without that, but we may need to just install those unsupported packages. Let's try and run it. So we open up the package on. What have we got in here? We've got a script to start. So let's do Deno. Let's start. Port 3000. Do we believe it? Let's have a look. Yeah, there we go. Demo app up and running. Deno can run your node projects. So you don't have to learn an entirely new way of doing everything in order to use the Deno tooling. It's super fast. All of your testing is built in, your linting is built in, your formatting is built in. I hope that this has been an interesting sort of whirlwind introduction to Deno. I hope that maybe this gives you the opportunity to get started with Deno for your own projects. If you do, I would absolutely love to see what you build. And yeah, I've been Jo Franchetti. I hope you've enjoyed this talk.
That was a great talk, Joe. I love that you just like randomly chose a node project without worry of like what you might like.
That's my trust. That's my
yeah, well, it worked out. So I was more like I wasn't so worried it wouldn't run on Deno. I'm like, well, I wonder what's in this project, what we're
yeah,
gonna
that's
put
true.
out
Oh
there.
my goodness. Yeah, we could have had anything.
Exactly.
Oh, look who's
So
arrived.
oh yeah, it's Puff. Hey,
Just in
Puff.
time.
All right, so we got a couple questions here. From one from my coach, Sean. What are some of the biggest benefits of using for Node when working within the context of a site framework? So I think he means like some of the frameworks like Next or Astro or whatever.
Yeah, so one of the things that I didn't mention is support for frameworks. So Deno absolutely supports all of your modern web frameworks. The advantages of Deno over Node are, so first of all, I mentioned that security model. It's something that I think is super important and is only going to become more important. We keep getting stories of packages that have been, excuse me, packages that have been hacked or had some other security issue. And I think just having that overview of what is accessing what is super important. So Deno can give you that sort of granular rundown. Not only that, I mentioned very briefly, Deno is built in Rust. So it's faster than Node. So if your dev time is important to you, especially if you're working on larger projects, you may find that it sort of shaves off a few seconds from your developer experience, which is something we're always looking for. And then I guess the final thing is all of the Deno APIs. Like, there's a lot of nice things built in there. And one of the things that a lot of people have been talking about recently is the fact that Node is now starting to support TypeScript out of the box. Node is starting to have its own test runner built in, but these are things that Deno has had for like 5 years now. It's something we're well practiced in, we're well tested in. We're taking feedback from the community constantly. We're able to very quickly iterate on that feedback. So if there's stuff that you want to see, like we may well be able to get it into the next release. Whereas Node is huge, much slower. They're going through, everything has to go through committee before it can be decided on. So yeah, those are the things that I love about Deno.
Yeah, I think Node's TypeScript support now it's like somewhat, it's not full TypeScript support, if I
No, it's
recall.
not.
It's kind of like a rudimentary TypeScript support. It's like, hey, you can use TypeScript and it won't break, is
Yeah,
kind of how I perceive
exactly.
it. Mm.
It's not quite there. Not to say that it won't get there, but I think also, you know, the same with having browser diversity. I think having runtime diversity is so important for the JavaScript environment as a whole, and the community as a whole. It's the only way that we're ever going to foster any kind of iteration, any kind of development, any kind of improvements on the community if we have healthy and happy competition. You know, Deno can try this out and then Node can get it in 5 years' time.
Yeah, one of the things I was actually looking up while you were speaking, because I was like, I have used Deno in the past and really liked it. But I do a lot of AWS stuff now, mostly
Uh-huh.
focused on AWS. And I was like, "Mm, can you use it in I did find you have something that says you can use it in Lambda. So
You
I
absolutely
was like,
can.
yeah. So I'm definitely gonna check that out, actually. I want to look into it some more. So
Yeah,
um
nice.
awesome. Okay, we've got more questions. We've got one from Nick. When I used to work at Netlify, we'd handle process.env in edge functions, which Netlify edge functions are in Deno, and map it to deno.env. I think process.env is supported natively with no compat, or no?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, quick and easy answer there. Just yes. Okay,
Also,
Anthony asks,
yeah, I don't know if a lot of people don't know that the Netlify serverless functions are run by Deno.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Whenever I ask an audience, have you used Deno before? A lot of people say no, and I'm like, oh, you might not know, you actually have.
And I think there was another company whose edge functions run on Deno. I'm forgetting who it was. It was like a cloud, like data store type thing. I can't remember their names. But anyway, uh,
May well be. There are quite a few. I mean, and one of
yeah,
the things that I haven't mentioned at all
Supabase. Yeah.
is
Yes.
Deno's deploy offering. So, if you want
Right.
hosting, you want serverless functions, Deno absolutely has that as well. So yeah, check it out.
Potter, our man behind the scenes here, reminded me it's Supabase that uses Deno for their edge functions
Oh,
as
right.
well.
Okay. Yeah.
hmm So Anthony asks, have there been measurable site speed improvements in using Deno node that you know of?
So it won't improve the speed of your site, unless if you're running, I guess if you're actually running Deno. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I don't actually know off the top of my head. Like, I don't have stats that I could give you, I'm afraid. But I can absolutely look them up and see if I can tweet them out afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. Um, I know that's not necessarily stuff you have on hand all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name. I'm going to say Benino says, is there an NPM audit equivalent in Deno JSR?
Yes, there is. So in fact, it's recently just been released. Let me go to the blog, and I believe that there has just been a whole blog post about this, or maybe it's coming soon.
Oh,
Um,
you divulge that, you know, pre-release information. You get it here first, people. Come to the jam.dev and learn about
It may
features.
well actually be in the release that is either going out today or tomorrow, but yes, there is either it exists already or there is going to be an equivalent. Yes. Again, I will tweet that out when I have the access to it.
Okay, great. Awesome. One other thing you talked a little bit about how I could run my existing node project on there, obviously. But if you're going to do that, I mean, what's your recommendation for like how somebody then goes about migrating to take some of the advantages of Deno after
Yeah,
they've got
so
their
I
project
mean,
running?
was very lucky with that project. You know, if it had been using CommonJS instead of ESM, we'd have maybe had more issues. So there are things that you will have to do in order to migrate your Node project over. Yeah, you will. There are some APIs that you will need to use your node colon specifier. There are maybe some packages that you might want to start installing from JSR instead. You're going to have to update from CommonJS to ESM, but I think that that's something that we should probably all be considering doing anyway at this point. Like, you know, you're modernizing isn't never going to be a bad idea for your project. And then also you can consider bringing TypeScript in. The nice thing, and I think the important thing about migrating over is that you can do it incrementally. So, you know, you don't have to change everything over to Deno APIs immediately. You can start doing it like as you add on to your project. You can start using, you know, the Deno file system instead of Node.fs. And in, you know, maybe once you have time to tidy up, you can do that later. I think that's something that's super important to a lot of developers. Like, they don't want to have to do a massive overhaul of their project. So I'd say that the biggest overhaul is going to be CJS, CSM. And then it's just a case of sort of incrementally swapping over to what I think are the nicer APIs.
They did look cleaner, for sure. So the examples you showed, like, definitely seem
Right.
easier than Node. So I guess, so the immediate thing would be if I'm migrating a project, I have to make those changes. Like, that's not an optional change. I have to make those changes to ESM
Yeah,
from
Deno
CommonJS. Okay.
they took the decision to not support CJS.
Right.
I think it has been contentious, and I can understand why people are maybe frustrated and confused by that. But we also, in our documentation, have a whole load of help on how to do that. So if you are moving over, we have, where is it? We have a bunch of documentation on Node support and what you can use from Node and what you can't. And then we also have a migration guide. Oh no, that's migration from 1 to 2. We do have a migration guide from Node to Deno, and we have also a bunch of examples. So if you're moving from
Well, you look, what does that mean if third-party library and it doesn't, like, it's only has a CommonJS version? Does that mean I won't be able to use it?
that does mean that you won't be able to use it. Yeah, you would need to find a where is
an alternative.
Yeah. But you know, there are plenty of modules out there.
Yeah. I mean, and you all have, I mean, in JSR, you'd have, it might be easy to, like, find in many cases an alternative already in there and start your migration process. Right. Okay. That makes sense. I think, you know,
There's a CJS to ESM example in here somewhere, but I'm snowblind to it at the moment. And just also to mention something that I didn't mention is that we have all of these examples. Oh, I'm not showing my screen right now. If you go to deno.com/examples, sorry, I thought I was sharing my screen. If you go to see docs.deno.com/examples, there's a whole bunch of example code in there. It's designed specifically to be little tiny blocks of code that you can literally copy and paste into your projects. There's also videos, there's also walkthrough tutorials. So, like, you're not on your own with this stuff. You know, we really want to help you have a good experience. And there's also the Deno Discord where a lot of our engineers hang out. So if you do decide to migrate over to Deno, we're in there and we're happy to help. You know, if you find that you're sort of stuck on anything, do shout in the Discord and one of us will help you out.
sounds amazing. And and congrats on the docs. They look, I when I've used them in the past, they were excellent. I didn't realize you were the person behind them. So yeah, they look great.
Yeah,
And there was
I
even a
am.
bunch of
Thanks.
compliments about it in the comments too.
Oh,
So
nice, awesome. And the one final thing I will show you, if you do find anything on any of the docs that you want to change, right at the bottom, we've got this feedback form, and you can tell me what you think. And this, I collect this, I read it every day. If you find something that is missing that you want to see, tell me, and I can literally update it and get it there for you the next day. Like, I want to make this as nice as I possibly can for you.
awesome, that's great. Well, this has been really great. I think, based on what I saw in the comments, you actually got a bunch of people who are ready to just jump in and give Deno a try. So
Amazing.
that's always a sign of a really good presentation. So thanks so much, Joe, for coming out and talking to us.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.